These are the Hallan roundhouses on the island of South Uist in the Outer Hebrides. They date back to about 1800 BC. One of them was in use for nearly 800 years, one of the longest lasting habitations from that period. They contain some fascinating finds. For example, the archaeologists discovered by the location of the various objects that were in the house that the building was built to face towards the sun. And as the sun passed across the sky, so the sunlight coming into the building would move. And the different occupations for the day were dotted around the house so that each one would be lit up just at the moment when it would be needed. Breakfast over here, supper over there, weaving during the day over here, all the different artifacts for the day's use were lined up around the house to take advantage of the lighting. But that wasn't the only remarkable thing. When the archaeologists came to excavate these houses, 1, 2, and 3, they discovered that buried under the walls of the houses were bodies. In this one, underneath the wall, was the body of an 8-year-old girl. And its position was such that the archaeologists concluded that the 8-year-old girl had been buried as a foundation sacrifice to ensure the good luck and fortune for the house. And then over here, in this third house, they discovered the rotting body of a 1-year-old child. Now, don't ask me how they knew it was rotting. I presume it was because the bones were disarticulated, that they were starting to fall apart. And that's why the archaeologists decided that it was rotting rather than just a burial. But again, why had it been buried there? Why had it been left until it was rotting? And the archaeologists could only conclude that again there was a sacrificial element involved. But perhaps the most grisly of all the finds was back here at this first house. Because lying here was the body of a 45 to 60-year-old woman. And just over here was the body of a man. And as the archaeologists studied these bodies forensically, they discovered that although all they saw was bones, these bodies had in fact been mummified. At some point in time, these bodies had been placed in a peat bog soon after death in order to be preserved. Now, we all know about the famous peat men, peat bodies. There's some in Ireland. There's Tolland Man, for example, in Denmark. These bodies had been left in the peat for perhaps 18 months or even longer until they had been mummified and preserved, and then they were dug up and brought back and placed in these houses and were only buried 100 or 200 years later. What's that all about? And again, the archaeologists can only conclude that the reason for it was religious. Probably it was some form of ancestor worship. And these were your ancestors that you preserved in the peat bog, and when they were nicely tanned, you brought them back and laid them down here in the house, a special house built just for them. But, as a further part of their forensic investigation, the archaeologists discovered that the body of the man was not in fact the body of a man, but it was the body of 3 men. The head and the jawbone belonged to one man, and the pelvis belonged to a second man, and the rest of the skeleton belonged to a third man. What was going on? I'm afraid the archaeologists didn't have a theory for that one. But you know, people talk these days about paganism. What a wonderful, peaceful religion it is. You know, dancing naked in the groves, hugging trees, being nice to flowers, all this sort of thing. But this is the true picture of paganism. before Christianity came along, before Christianity had even been heard of. This is paganism. An 8-year-old girl killed and buried beneath the foundations of a house to ensure good luck for the inhabitants. A 1-year-old child, his body kept until it was rotting and then buried beneath the foundations of that third house. And meanwhile, you have the bog bodies in their own separate dwelling where they could be worshipped, again as part of a cult. That's paganism. For myself, I much prefer Christianity, a religion that truly is of peace, of love, not superstition, not sacrifice, not 8-year-old girls buried beneath the floor, but God, who loved you enough to give himself for you.